Welcome, welcome, guys. We are back for another episode of The Lock-In. We might have to change the name of this show very shortly, as the last one was from Prague, and I believe the next few are going to be from Tallinn, Dublin, and Dublin. So this is the only time we're actually locked in our houses, as you can see, myself and Dara. Dara, there is a lot of poker coming up in Dublin. I'm over there a couple of times.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of poker coming up. Also, people will probably notice I have a new setup here. Obviously, Prague went so badly that I had to take a job in a telecenter, so I'm double jobbing. But yeah, looking forward to getting back to poker once I've rebuilt my role.
Well, one festival that might help you rebuild it is the Irish Open. It's always at the top of every Irish poker player's calendar, and I can't wait for it. But we are contractually obliged to shout loudest about the Dublin Poker Festival running from April 28th to May 8th. That festival will encompass two main events, the ACOP and the European Deep Stacks, both of which you can qualify for now on Unibet Poker. Super Satellites running all through the week, and there is the finals on Sunday. Big overlay in the last few of these, so plenty of value to grab there. Our guest this week, he requires no introduction, but I'm going to give it a go anyway. He is a reality TV star turned Twitch phenom. Over the last 8 years or so, he has treated his viewers to a very exciting journey, it must be said, from recreational player to high stakes crusher. He is our great pal, Kevin Martin. Kevin, welcome to The Lock-In.
Hey, it's nice to be on The Lock-In. Thank you for that introduction. I love the introduction. The high stakes crusher, I might tweak that a little bit. I don't think I've arrived and deserved that title just yet, but
high stakes winner.
So I am crushing low stakes, mid stakes, 215s, 500s as well. Every time I've stepped in the 1K pluses, they've trashed me down to reality. So I don't know what you want to determine high stakes. If high stakes is 215, then and 500s, then I'm a high stakes winner. But I consider high stakes 1K pluses, and those guys are still in a different league than me. So we still have a little ways to go in the journey, but that's a very nice introduction.
Welcome to the show, high stakes participant Kevin Martin.
Hey, exactly. Perfect. That fits me much better. Dara, David, always nice to talk to the lads. I'm getting a little bit of FOMO. You guys are talking about the Irish Open and everything. And I've never even been over there, let alone played poker over in Europe. But all those festivals look like really, really good action. So maybe one of these days I'll have to travel to the Irish Open and participate.
We would love to have you. Well, before getting into some news topics, I wanted to zoom in on three of your recent tweets, actually, Kevin. I particularly like this one from just a couple of days ago. You said, underutilized strategy, analyzing smart, successful people in your industry and copying their habits. Which poker player and I guess which poker streamer have you copied most from?
It's a great, I do believe in that. Like, if you're trying to find success or improve yourself in any industry, regardless of poker, whatever it is, emulating other successful people is just like kind of proven to be an amazing strategy. And that's how I've always approached it is if you put me in a dark room and said, create these strategies for success yourself, I would really struggle. But I've done a really good job at observing people and figuring out what they did to make their success happen, and then trying to copy those strategies. So a couple of people that come to the top of the mind. I mean, for Twitch and content, Jason Somerville was one of the first guys like to break on the poker content world. So I've always been picking his brain and using some of his strategies. Poker wise, the dude that I look up to specifically is Jason Koon, and I'll tell you why. First of all, not many people have won more money in poker than Jason Koon. The dude just prints. He finds good spots and prints. But when I talk to Jason, and I get inside of his brain, some poker players that I talk to, I have a tough time to relate to because their brain operates on a different stratosphere. For example, if I talk to Ike Haxton or the Jungle Man or these guys, I just feel like are just geniuses, right? They're hitting a mental frequency that I'm not really capable of. Not saying Jason Koon isn't a genius. The man is hella smart. But with him and Seth Davies and the way they've attacked the poker world, I feel like most of their successes come from just pure grit, determination, and making it happen. And with Jason's been very open about his story, about coming from a crazy upbringing, having no money, and then just having this intense desire to make it happen for himself. I relate to that a lot. So he's definitely one of my favorites that I continually bring up. And the dude just prints, man. He gets it done. He just has all the money and all the success, and he's jacked. He's got the family. He's got the beautiful wife, the kids. So he's somebody who I try to emulate for sure.
Yeah, no, he's a great choice of role model. Dara, it is said that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. In poker, we often talk about monkey see, monkey do players who sort of learn by osmosis as the strategies of maybe others around them slowly sinks in. Kevin is talking about something a bit different and more akin to deep dives or reverse engineering someone else's method and maybe trying to figure out what they're doing that way and emulating as best he can. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of great mentors that have passed on info to me and stuff. And Dara's my dude when it comes to ICM spots and satellites. Anytime I have one of those questions, I send it off to Dara. So I've taken his expertise when it comes to just folding on my entire range. Become much better at that. Yeah, I mean, like really, the way I think about it, if you want to get good at something. Let's use basketball if you want to get good at basketball, one of the worst things you can do is go play pickup basketball in the park. You're going to get some fun. You're going to play with the lads or whatever. But in terms of improving your skill set, I love looking at a subject and then dividing it into different skill sets. So with basketball, you have free throw shooting, you have dribbling, you have these different areas that you can optimize. So I feel like if you want to be an amazing basketball player, take one specific skill set and dedicate your entire focus and study to that. So this month I'm working on free throws. Research free throw shooting. Who are the best free throw shooters in the world? What technique do they use? Go practice every day. And once you hone in that aspect, you're like, wow, I'm actually pretty good at free throws now because I've taken the strategy, practice it, and wow, okay, that's optimized. Let's go on to dribbling and figure that out. Once you put this all together, you have this amazing fundamental base to become an amazing basketball player. And that's where you want to increase your pickup time and go dunk on your friends. I feel like poker is a similar way as well. It is this working unit, but like dialing in your individual aspects has been a really effective strategy for me.
Dara, I like how Kevin has said there, he's trying to implement other people's strategies, stealing other people's ideas. You might he stole your question right there. Do you have anything to add?
No, well, the only thing I would add is that while it's true that, you can jive better with some players, I think a lot of it has to do with just who's a really good communicator. And I think Jason is an amazing communicator. I think a lot of that comes from just how empathetic he is as an individual. Like he can kind of get into somebody else's head and he can think, okay, well, maybe the way I think about it is not what they need. I'll explain it in terms that they understand. And I think, there are different skills being a good player and being a good communicator. And somebody like Jungle is an amazing player, but I think he genuinely thinks everybody thinks like he does and can't necessarily relate to the rest of us. So yeah, I think that's probably the key to somebody actually being a good coach. It's just the sort of communication ability.
Great point. Well, to your second tweet there, Kevin, you said, I'm trying my hand at reality TV casting, looking for individuals that are single, confident, looking for love, seeking adventure, and want to win some money. Get in touch with me. Well, I'm not putting our names forward, but since you do fancy yourself as a casting agent, I wanted to ask you, what qualities, if any, do you think Dara and I might have in, say, a Big Brother type setting?
Yeah, I have never seen you guys, shirtless. You got the good bods.
No.
That's funny that you bring that tweet up. You guys are single. You want to put your hands forward in the casting pool?
No, but I'm interested now, I suppose, because you obviously have loads of experience with that particular show as much as anything else. And, conflict sort of sells TV of that nature a lot of the time. And maybe in the conflict stakes, we have something to offer. So I don't know. I'm just interested to know, as a casting agent, because remember, this is your job now, you're the casting agent. How would you do it?
I think you guys are both great communicators, and that would be your asset on reality television. A lot of people can go on a reality TV show and be themselves, but communicating a storyline, especially with the directors and putting the show together, is a unique skill. So that's where you guys could thrive. That's just a fun little thing. Like, obviously, I was on reality TV a couple of times. The person who cast me actually called me up the other day. He's like, hey, what are you doing? And we need an affiliate in Canada to kind of scoop up and increase our casting portfolio. So yeah, I've been DMing people on Instagram. Hey, you want to go on the show? You want to go on the show or whatever? Just because the actual casting process for reality television is like fascinating. I went through it multiple times. I failed at it multiple times. I got cut many times before they actually put me on a show. So learning that process and what's going on there, I was like, I kind of want to try the other side of it. So yeah, if you guys know any, this is international as well. Do you guys know any? This is what I'm looking for. Single, ideally between 25, 35, attractive, and adventurous, wild, ready to put themselves out there. If you guys know anybody that fits that profile, give them to me, and I would love to pursue that.
I'm not sure we know anyone like that, but I will extend that invitation to our audience there. If you know anybody who meets that description, please get in touch with Kevin. Dara, and it is Dara's question now, no stealing this time, Kev. Bill Perkins tried a reality TV show a while back. It was sort of a Big Brother-ish, kind of lots of people in a house type of thing. He called it Thirst Lounge. It never quite caught on, though, and I'm interested to know why you think that might be.
Yeah, that was...
I mean, it's hard to say why it never caught on. It's... one of those things that it seemed like it might work, but then it kind of just ended up being a bunch of guys on Twitch at the same time. And I don't think there was, a lot of the stuff that comes from Big Brother and other stuff like it is, people getting voted out and people getting voted in. So it probably lost that element as well. It was just basically like you were watching a grindhouse. So I don't think it quite fit the whole reality TV template. You do need conflict. You do need people hating each other and trying to vote each other out and all that stuff. So I think that's probably where it went wrong. Actually,
that was the Thirst Lounge, right? The Thirst Lounge. I remember the specific moment. It was 2017 PCA. By the way, rip to the PCA. I don't think we'll see that again.
By the way, I think you might be wrong. I think it's coming back. But
is anyway, it? By the way, I thought it was done. Really, I mean, come on.
Leaky lapping there for everyone.
I'm ready to pay for another $8 banana at the PCA sometime. So bring it back. It was 2017. We're at the PCA. It was me and a couple of people, and Bill Perkins was there. We're pretty drunk, and Bill Perkins is like, what are the reasons? He's an idea guy. He loves ideas. He loves talking about crazy prop bets, random ideas. We're all drunk, and this idea formed about this poker reality show. And I was like, I don't want to be the no man, but I also was like, I don't know if this is the best idea. But they fired at it. Did kind of not work out. What happened? Why? These things are just incredibly massive productions if you want to do a good job. If you want to create a good actual storyline, editing, producers, this is not an amateur production. And they just tried to throw a couple of people. They threw 10 people in a house. I think there was 2 producers with one camera editing. It just wasn't set up for success. I think the casting also was maybe not the strongest, even though there were some amazing people involved in that project. But yeah, so a mini fire festival event that happened in the poker world. There's been plenty of those. People just come up with ideas, and especially with poker. And this is why I always think about poker. As a content creator, poker is a very niche little bubble in the world. And to be honest, I love poker, but I can also have enough awareness to say that poker is not always the best spectator sport. That's where it's always struggled. The pace of the game is always a big issue when it comes to spectating and some other factors. It's just not that dynamic and that interesting to somebody who's not involved in the game. And that's where my job as a content creator is always thinking, how can I redo poker in a way where it can capture the viral audience? And it's very, very, very tough. So yeah, I mean, that's another reason why it didn't work out, sadly, but I was hopeful for that project.
Yeah, some more great insights from you there. You mentioned the fire festival. I'm just wondering, did the poor people from Thirst Lounge end up having to sleep in hurricane tents by the end of that? I don't know what happened to them. But anyway, moving on. Your last tweet is about high stakes poker. I'm pretty sure Dara hasn't been watching this, but despite my complaints, I guess, about episodes 1 and 2, which I really did find hard to view, I've continued to watch the show, and I have to say, as a TV show, it has improved greatly with almost some of the bigger, more legendary people having left the game, and people like our former guests, Jennifer Tilly and Joanne Liu, entering the game. Kevin, I feel like you're going to agree with this. You recently tweeted your list of the most entertaining players, and they included Jennifer. You mentioned Doyle, Gareth Adelstein, and Jean-Robert Ballond. It's kind of a TV question again, so it should be in your wheelhouse. Do you agree that something didn't quite work with the first lineup?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been watching high stakes poker, and I don't know what it was. I think it was when Phil Ivey folded King Queen offsuit for $1,200. I said, "What the hell has happened to the legend that is Phil Ivey?" It was like in a very, not only in like, so on these shows, these guys, I feel like on these shows, when you're playing really dialed in, no limit hold'em, cash games, no ante, if you're playing optimal strategy, it should be a very tight pre-flop strategy. For these shows to succeed, there almost has to be a kind of a universal agreement between all players. Okay, we know poker strategy. We're just all going to widen our ranges in these spots. We're all going to go a couple pips wider, even though it's not like perfect strategy. And yeah, it was like open call, and Phil Ivey mucked King Queen off for 1,200. And I was like, I can't watch this anymore. Like, what is going on? You know, it would have been the most so that was interesting. Phil Ivey was a huge disappointment on high stakes poker. Tom Dwan, I feel like, you know, I was like, what's going on with Dwan as well? He's kind of just been super nitty. He hasn't ran one massive bluff, which is what he's been known for back when the show started. So I was also like, oh God, this is not going to go super well. But then as the show progressed, Jennifer Tilley, I mean, I am in love with this woman. She just brought so much pizzazz, and she's firing so hard. Doyle, at his very old age of just V-pipping all these crazy hands, you know, Doyle played a 4-bet pot with ace 4 suited, which is super epic. He stacked Garrett. Garrett as well is one of my idols in the poker world. And interesting, he had a little run on Survivor that didn't work out too well. I agree. The show was super slow, but the recent group has really stepped up to the plate, and it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I'm kind of reminded now of something John Duthie said to us in his interview. And actually, I think I do remember it being something he said years ago, where for TV poker, he was the producer as well as being there for I think it was the Ladbrokes Million or something like that. And as a player there, he just thought, oh, this is really boring. Everyone's playing too tight. So he just decided to loosen up for the sake of good TV, and then ended up winning the tournament because everyone thought he was a nit. So he got loads of credit and sort of ran everyone over. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was the very first Ladbrokes Poker Million. And he was basically there as a sort of a producer, a guy who understood TV, but wasn't really much of a poker player at the time. And he just thought after 2 orbits, this is incredibly boring. Somebody opens, everybody folds. Somebody else opens next hand, everybody folds. So he's just started 3-betting like crazy and playing pretty much every hand, and nobody ever adjusted or fought back. A lot of that had to do with, at the time, the old school pros hated the fact that people could see their cards, and they didn't want to be seen opening 7-5 suited or whatever. They felt it was important to maintain the image. But yeah, it really worked out for him. He actually ended up winning that first Ladbrokes Poker Million. And of course, John developed into a really good player afterwards. But it was all about his television sensibility. He just thought, this is really bad TV. Somebody has to do something.
And I mean, I've been a content producer for 8 years. And even in that short 8 years, the entire content world has shifted. Content has gotten faster edits, more in your face. Because now when you're dealing with content and all the options between YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, like people's attention spans are shorter than ever, right? And this is very bad for poker content, because poker is like a full interesting poker hand can be 8-9 minutes. And you're having kids that can't watch 5 seconds of a TikTok before they decide to move on to the next thing, you know? So we're in this constant battle of like how to make poker engaging. But I mean, the recent show on high stakes poker has stepped up to the plate. But even that is like, it's like one of the best pieces of poker content. How can that, like, my mom would never watch that. It doesn't matter how good it was or the level of production or you know how big the game is. There's just certain obstacles we face, and I think other little niche industries face this as well, like chess or, you know, certain video games. And anyway, this is how my brain thinks all the time. I wake up and basically there's 2 dominant thoughts of, one, how can I get better at poker, and how can I make poker content that reaches more people? And my brain is just constantly thinking about that.
That's great stuff. Well, moving on to some news now. Doug Polk is ever so slowly inching closer to naming his best player of all time, as voted by his Upswing faithful. With some crowdsourcing, I guess you could call it, and groupthink, he compiled the top 100. That list got whittled down to 20 via vote. Now it's at 5. Phil Ivey looks like he's going to romp home, despite the fact that he's now folding King Queen to a single raise. Dara and I already threw our support behind Doyle and Eric Seidel in a recent episode. So, Kevin, who do you like?
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. Who's the top 5? Let me guess, by the way. I actually haven't seen the list. Let me take a crack at it. Top 5, I think, would be Phil Ivey, Doyle Brunson, Phil Hellmuth. Did Dwan get on the top 5 list? And maybe someone else, maybe like, I don't know, fill in the blank. I can't really.
Daniel Negreanu made the list, and the fifth
Dean
one
Eggs, yes.
was actually a surprising one. It was Linus Loliger, who's obviously a phenomenal talent, arguably the best player today, but probably hasn't kind of had the test of time qualifications of some of the others. But anyway, Doug was very persuasive, I guess, in the top 20 poll, sort of shouting for Linus's. People were actually at that point arguing whether he should have been in the top 20, and Doug was adamant he should have been right at the top of the list. So I think he's able to persuade the voters at some level, and that's ended up in him being, I think, at number 5.
That's very interesting. Out of those, I want to give it to Doyle. Doyle is the godfather, got it done, the original poker content creator, creating Super System, actively a massive part of the poker boom, appeared on all the television shows, and still playing in 2022, and V-pipping like a boss on poker shows. I would just give him the nod. And I would also Phil Hellmuth. I intensely study No Limit Hold'em, and when I look at Phil Hellmuth's No Limit Hold'em game, I mean, far be it for me to criticize, but he's not playing like great No Limit Hold'em on today's standards compared to the other No Limit players. But Phil as a whole, how he's gotten it done through decade and decade. And another part that people underrate Phil is his marketing and like what he's done to I can't imagine how much money Phil Hellmuth has made by just his image, by being Phil Hellmuth, and poker players massively underrate that as well. So I think I would go Doyle 1, Phil Hellmuth in 2nd for me. That's my top 2.
Nice. Well, Dara, Doug's list left out online players. Actually, that was probably the most obvious thing, was it left out online tournament players in particular. So I thought I would ask you the question, because you would have a good sense over 14, 15-year career now. And that's a lot of the online landscape. I guess online really only started like 2000 or something around there. So what would you, or who would you vote for as your maybe top 5 online tournament players of all time?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Moorman, I think, is still the biggest winner of all time online in tournaments. So he would certainly have to be in the conversation. Guys like Pads as well have a pretty sick record, and Pads' group in general, which also includes European, for example, and Graf Tekel. You could definitely make a case for those guys. Lena obviously is a complete phenomenon as well in online tournaments. The problem all online players have is that,
Darwin as well. Get really him cares. In there, right?
Yeah. And I think Doug in particular doesn't care about online tournaments because Doug is essentially a live cash guy. So this is like the polar opposite of what he cares about. And that very much reflects in the list. But yeah, I guess if I have to go with 5 people, that's it. And I'm sure as soon as this ends, I'm going to think of a 6th person who's probably better than all those 5. But it's one of those things we don't really think about it because people don't really compile those lists very often. The people who are normally in the conversations are the people we've been talking about: Helmut, Negreanu, Ivy, Doyle, etc., and people just don't think about online tournament players in the same sort of category.
Yeah, you mentioned Nicholas Ashtet there, Lena, as he's better known online. Obviously, he went popped over to Prague, played a couple of 10 or 25Ks and came 2nd in 2 of them, I think. So obviously, those guys are just sick good, and when they do get opportunities, and they don't give themselves many opportunities live, they can obviously perform at that level too. One I would definitely give a shout out to is H Styles. He's a bit of an OG. He's been around for many years.
That's the one I forgot.
That's the one you forgot. Okay. The other names I'm going to list, and then maybe if you jump in after me, then Kevin, would be Peter Trapley, better known as Belabashi online, and Roman Romanovsky, better known as Romeo Pro or Romo Pro. They would be the other names that jump at me. What about you?
The only name that really Darwin has just been the best for the longest of times, right? That's one. I've been doing commentary on the Super Millions, which is a 10K on GG Poker that runs every week, and some of the guys are just like so sick. There's this guy Artur Mortensen. I think I'm butchering his last name. Artur, basically. Did you see that hand, by the way? He won the tournament with a triple check raise on the final hand. He won the whole tournament on a triple check raise. It was like unbelievable. And it wasn't even like a line that I just think he was styling. Like, I think he knew what was going on and wanted to get it in there. So, I mean, the level of talent at the top. I talked to Fader Holtz about this because I had Fader on the show, and Fader was like, man, in 2016, I was like so dialed in and so good. And he's like, I'm still dialed in and so good, but there's just like 70 more guys that are dialed in and just as good now as well. You know what I mean? Like, he feels like his skill limit hasn't declined, but everybody has just approached him in a rapid way. So, yeah, crazy, the landscape of the online poker world, and just how much talent and crushers there are on the felt these days.
I like the idea now of Arthur Martosian knowing that you were the commentator and thought, well, I have to style for the man who always trying to like market poker better. You know, I gotta show him something. So if he's going to commentate on
it was crazy. It was heads up. The hand started 16 big blinds effective, and he got the triple check raise it. It was like the craziest thing I've ever seen. I was losing my mind.
Great stuff. Well, from one strong Doug Polk opinion, I guess, or sort of Doug Polk's faithful opinions, to another, Doug was very negative this week about all the staring that's been going on the US Poker Open final table. This is the one the other day, featuring, of course, Stevie Chidwick and Alex Foxen. I put out a funny video edit today, actually, of the rather intense staring match between those two guys from that event. I set it to Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye, because I thought there was a way to cut all the staring to make it look almost homoerotic and romantic. So I thought that was, that was my little effort to almost take the heat out of it as well. It seemed like people were getting far too serious about this. But joking aside, it does raise, I suppose, a somewhat serious point about live and, whether, like, let's explore the idea. So some onlookers, and I guess Doug is part of this, think that the lads take this too far with the staring. And I must say, I completely disagree. I actually find it very entertaining. Dara, I think it's fair to say we both do a lot of staring at our opponents while we're in hands, and maybe not to the intensity of these lads, but I feel like it's a huge part of what separates live from online, and part and parcel of why you can maybe in a live context take more passive lines, because there's going to be this extra chunk of information available to you down the streets that will often tip decisions in one way or another. Can you talk about the importance of live reads in a general sense?
Yeah, sure. Like, I don't do the out and out staring. I actually find that if you're looking at somebody in a more relaxed manner, they're more likely to give something off than if they know you're staring at them intensely. Although, again, if they're very nervous, maybe the intense stare down works as well. But certainly it's a huge part of live. Now, it depends on the level you're at. Like, if you're playing a bunch of really, really good players, you're going to be lucky if you pick up maybe one thing all day. But if you're playing at in softer fields, like say at the WSOP, you'll actually pick up a lot of stuff, and it can really make a huge difference. You can more or less tell which part of their range somebody is in a lot of the time, and that's just a massive edge to have. It's something which I sort of struggle when I'm coaching online players to get them to take seriously, because they think it's all nonsense and something Phil Hellmuth made up, and it doesn't actually exist. It's like white magic. But I think they do generally come around to it, when they get a bit of experience. Again, playing in inexperienced fields. If you're playing in high rollers, good luck at picking up anything. All those guys are pretty much nailed down in terms of what they give off. But if you're playing, Irish Open, WSOP, Unibet Open, whatever, there's a very, very good chance you're going to pick up a lot of that stuff, and it's massively important. Like, it adds so much to your win rate. A relatively major technical mistake early on in a tournament might only cost you one or two big blinds, but a very solid read might win you an extra 10 big blinds, 20 big blinds. So I think it's something which online players in particular ignore at their peril. But it is kind of funny that it's just accepted in the poker world that you can do this. I mean, I had a conversation with John O'Cruth, who we've had on the chip race in the past, in a bar in Toronto, and he said we were actually watching Timex staring somebody down, and he said, like, can you imagine if he did that in a bar? Like, if he's at the next table to you and he just starts intensely staring at you, it just wouldn't really be socially acceptable. But it's fine in poker, so yeah, I mean, you've got to take every edge.
Yeah, well, Alex Foxen actually tweeted about this after he took down that event. He did take it down in the end. He said, in all seriousness, I don't stare at a random wreck on day one the same way I do at Stevie on an FT. Also, isn't this more fun to watch than two people staring straight at the felt while tanking? For what it's worth, dozens of wrecks have mentioned hoping to get into a hand versus me so that they can experience that look. Kevin, with that in mind, what is your overall approach to live poker? I imagine you're a more gregarious personality at the table, but maybe mid-hand you do a bit of staring, or you do a little bit of concentration, or maybe you stay quiet. Can you talk us through what your approach is?
I agree with you guys on the live reads being a big thing, but I also agree with Doug that the intense soul-gazing stare is hella cringe, super cringy, and I do not like it. For the game as general, again, these guys are high rollers. Who am I to criticize? Let's go into the first part. Live poker. If you're playing in a $500 live tournament, a 1K at your local casino, live reads are a massive thing. I've had my ROI in live tournaments is amazing. I've done very well at these things, and live reads are absolutely a thing. They're not at the top of the list, but after you fundamentally go through a hand and you're still unsure, if you're still unsure and you look at the person and you sense their energy, I've made huge reads off of this correctly. And like, I'm not great at live reads, but they're especially an amateur will just give their spot away. They'll give how they feel about the hand. So it's massive. But like, I look at them with a soft glaze in a hand, and maybe for 30 seconds. And if they look at me, I can keep eye contact for 5 or 6 seconds. But then like the social norm is to look away, like just with the way that these guys take it specifically. And they just like, it's very uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable as a viewer of the poker game. At the table, it would as well. I agree with Doug. I don't think it's good that the top players are Mike McDonald was the OG really, but like think about how like Daniel handles himself at the table. One of the all-time ambassadors of the game. He looks at people, engages with them, but he doesn't like make them uncomfortable. I feel like the way these guys are approaching it, but credit to Fox, and he said he wouldn't do it to a random wreck, of course, but still the deep, intense staring, I hate it, man. I'm with Doug Polk on this one. It's super cringy.
What I never understand is how they don't break into laughter, because I think sometimes when you have these like really, and there was this in particular, this US Open final table, there were like 10 seconds of them staring at each other and then one of them pretending to look away, and so the other one looked away and then the other guy looked back, and it went on and on for like a painful, as you say, kind of cringy amount of time. But what I couldn't understand is when they're deeply looking at each other, how does one of them not just crack a smile? Because that's what I think I would end up doing. But anyway, we're talking about live poker. We're talking about live poker tells here, but I want to talk a little bit about the glut of live poker that is coming up. Kevin, how much do you plan on playing over the next, I don't know, few months before Vegas? And any thoughts? You mentioned earlier maybe Irish Open on the horizon. Any thoughts of traveling across the pond to play?
These are things that I would like to do, but right now I'm just like, it's live poker is not a priority. The World Series of Poker main event is auto booked every year. I will never miss that tournament. Besides that, I'm really into content and I'm really into like studying right now. I go through these waves of really intense, study, and I'm in one of those right now where I'm really trying to get better and like active coaching with my coach and really studying an hour and every day, trying to continue to level up where I can go, maybe one day my dream is to compete with the Foxens and the Chidwicks. I'm trying to get to that level. So not a lot of live poker coming up, which is sad because I love live poker. There's a couple local mains in Canada that I will always go participate in, but unlikely to see me in the Irish Open anytime super soon.
Well, disappointed to hear that. But Dara, we are inundated. We just booked our trip to Tallinn ahead of the Irish Open. We have a bit of a commentary stint at the Patrick Antonius Festival. The Unibet partner Dublin and Malta Poker Festivals are also on the horizon. There's rumblings about a UK IPT Dublin in May as well. Then Vegas is not that far off. And then EPT Barcelona, I assume, is going to retake its usual spot in August. Here in Malta, I think I've also got a party poker event, a Battle of Malta. I'm getting sort of exhausted thinking about it. You are how will I put it? You are the cashiest. Is that a word? You are the cashiest Irish poker player of all time with 182. I checked this afternoon. Well clear of me in second with 146. It's very likely you're going to crack 200 before Christmas, right?
Possibly. Yeah. I mean, I think in my in my really good years, I've hit mid-20s, and there's just so much live poker this year. I mean, you mentioned them all there. In Dublin alone, in the next few weeks, I'm playing Mammoth, followed by Norwegian Championships, followed by Irish Poker Open, followed by Dublin Poker Festival, which actually is two festivals rolled into one. And then apparently UKIP Dublin is going to be shortly thereafter. And even within that, I'm going to Tallinn for a trip as well. And it's similar for you. I mean, there's so much live poker on in Malta. Unibail are actually splitting us up because the Malta Poker Festival clashes with the Dublin Poker Festival. So obviously I'm doing Dublin and you're doing Malta, and then we're going to be basically into Vegas, and then we're going to have all the traditional stuff in the fall, like the Barcelona that you mentioned. Stars have brought back all the regional tours. So yeah, it feels like we're just going to be playing live poker at least until Christmas, but maybe for the rest of our lives at this point.
Yeah, there is a sense I have now that we're in danger of overcooking the goose. We were speaking to a soon to be on the show, actually this is a bit of a spoiler, Kind of England. We did an interview with her today for a future episode of the Chip Race, and we mentioned how I suppose what's going on now is we have so much live poker going on. It's a little bit like we're a year behind America. America sort of opened up post lockdown pandemic phase a year before us. They obviously had ridiculous numbers immediately. And she said they're still having ridiculously high numbers. I'm wondering, and I don't know what your take on this would be, is there a danger that like we're using up everyone's enthusiasm too quickly with too much, and too much of a good thing will maybe sour it for us?
Yeah, it was me who asked that question to Kaina because I was curious what the American experience was, and it was interesting to hear that the same demand is there, because you can literally feel the pent up demand here. Everybody's asking about live events coming up, and every tournament organizer, irrespective of what time of year they normally have their tournament, has one plan. They're cramming it in the next 2 months because they're basically trying to make up for last year, which is understandable. There is a danger that they're going to overcook the Golden Goose, but her experience from America was that the demand was so great that it's still there almost a year on. And I feel like it's going to be the same here. People are really absolutely gagging for live poker again. And I honestly think we're going to see record numbers at a lot of those events that you mentioned.
And Kev, turning back to you there, obviously you are an ambassador for GG, and obviously, you know, most of your focus is online, as you said, and it's great when you get into those sort of study routines and you're crushing away. But GG have sort of gone for a different approach. They're obviously the headline sponsor of the World Series these days, and the World Series has a lot going on, circuit events and all that good stuff too. But they haven't decided to sort of launch their own tour. They decided a policy, I think, of sort of piggybacking existing tours, partnering with existing tours, that kind of thing. What do you think of that approach?
Yeah, I mean, Gigi's representation at the World Series of Poker has been unbelievable. Like last year was really, really massive, and they did a really good job of branding. The Flip and Go event, which I think was a little controversial. I don't think you like that one, right, David? the Flip and Go bracelet event. Yeah, I'm in a different sector. I'm in the content sector with GG Poker. Are they going to release their own tours, their own stops? I think these things are still being decided, and if they are, I don't have the info on that. It would kind of be nice to have some sort of like prestigious GG, 5 million main event somewhere, right? That would be pretty sweet. They're upswinging though. They're upswinging hard. Recently, the thing about GG Poker and why I personally love working with them is like they fire hard. They really go for it. And my whole career of fired. I've missed a lot, hit a lot. And I just think GG Poker is going to be so big and continue to be the main force over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence that GG will launch their own tours. I've heard rumblings from people inside the company that that's likely to happen. I'd be very, very surprised if, given how competitive they are on all the other fronts and how they get after it, I don't think it's going to be a long-term policy of just partnering with existing tours. I think we can expect to see them make a big splash in that area. In fact, we know some of the people from former companies that we worked with who were involved in there. They certainly have a very good team. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting to see how the sort of the front runners in the industry view that. Obviously, you can throw WPT into the mix there. They're making a big splash. They're actually going to go the other way. They're obviously a big live brand, and there's talk of them developing online and that kind of stuff later in the year too. So I'm fascinated to see how the poker landscape even looks 9 months from now. We spoke about GG there. Finally, there is a big announcement from GG, actually almost just before we came on air. They have retained Dan Bilzerian as a partner. Dara, we jokingly said that they binned him a few weeks ago because they've taken him out of the bin and cleaned him off, and they're sort of going to bring him back to life. It's obviously a controversial decision, as was signing him to begin with. I've heard on the grapevine that it is the intention perhaps to do some heads-up games with him or have some GG themed special matches for him, where I guess his role as he's sort of being defined as partner now will be something like that. I hope if they do that, actually they get the match in with Alex O'Brien, our good friend. She's long overdue her game. The way it's been communicated has been a little bit confusing. I'm keen to bring you in on this, Kevin. It almost gives the impression that maybe they didn't fully know their situation or their relationship with them until a few days or a week after one would have thought they did. Darren and I have been outspoken about Dan Bilzerian in the past, so I don't think we need to sort of repeat our views. I'm keen to hear yours.
Danny Bilzerian, Danny B. I met him in the World Series for 5 seconds. A quick story. He was at the GG party. I'm like, oh my God, Dan Bilzerian's here. 4 gorgeous women around him. Like, he's on GG Poker. I'm on GG Poker. I'm gonna go talk to this guy. So go up there, Dan, what's up, man? Dan, I'm on GG Poker. And I start about a sentence and a half in. And when you look at somebody and they're just like, their eyes like glaze over and they're like, I quickly cued in 7 seconds in. I was like, oh, this guy just doesn't care about what I have to say. I'm not some young, hot 20-year-old. So I was like, have a good night, Dan. We'll see that. The original signing to Dan Bilzerian was very controversial. I respected it. GG was swinging for the fences. There's this guy with this massive Instagram following. His demographic is douchey males. Hey, douchey males love to gamble. Maybe we can get some conversions into the poker world as well. So the original attempt, I really respected. This recently they took him down, and then, oh, he's still a partner. I think there has been some confusion here and mishandling, which hasn't been great. But yeah, I mean, that's my opinions. Dan and I are not sending each other Christmas cards. I don't know the data. Is he bringing people onto the website? I really, really, really don't know. And I wonder, like, they took his emotes down. I was always rocking the Danny Bilzerian emotes. What does it mean that he's a partner now? I'm not sure. So that's my thoughts. Original signing, I love the attempt. This recent back and forth wish-wash hasn't been handled perfectly. Yeah, those are my thoughts on Dan Bilzerian.
No, I really appreciate you being so frank about it. I know it's sort of awkward sometimes to talk about internal company stuff, so it is very much appreciated you being giving us your candor there. Before we go, I want to plug the Patrick Antonius Poker Challenge, which I mentioned earlier on. It'll be taking place in Tallinn from April 4th to 10th. There will be live stream coverage from that event for the nights of the 7th, 8th and 9th of April. And I'm very pleased to say that Dara and I will be in the commentary box for those. I think we will have a third commentator, but I won't say who it is just in case that's not arranged yet. But please do check out our social media for updates on where to find those nightly streams. They're bound to be very entertaining. We're also going to make a lock-in from Tallinn, so that will be the next time you will probably hear from us. It remains for me to thank my co-host Dara O'Kearney.
Thank you, David. It's been a lot of fun, and it's always great to catch up with Kevin.
It certainly is. And thank you so much, Kevin, our very special guest this week.
Thank you very much. Dara, David, I always appreciate you. Dara, we gotta look at some more satellite spots coming up. All right. You gotta, I've commented on my Twitch stream recently that, my 4 big blind to 8 big blind game is really bad. And a lot of people are like, oh, you have 4 big blinds. How can you misplay it? But I keep trying to tell my audience of like, this is actually, especially with bubbles. Like I had 3 tournaments where I stone bubbled the other day, and I was like, was I playing too tight before? Was I not, so I need to, I'll be picking your brain in the future about these spots.
Yeah, that's
Jared-
good to hear. I mean, David played a lot of those very shallow satellites that were called 3Xs back in the day on Stars. They're now called Splash, I think. They don't run as often as they used to, but we used to joke about the fact that we were probably the best 4 big blind players in the world. I think a lot of the cash players sort of poo-poo at this. They go like, how much edge can you really have? But when you only have 4 big blinds, even 0.1 of a big blind is pretty significant. If you can add that to, that sort of edge, that's an extra 2.5%. And if it's the later stages of a tournament where everybody has 4 big blinds, then it's a really big edge.
That is literally what I get. This happens all the time now, and I think maybe regular listeners of the show could probably testify that they've noticed this in the past. I was literally about to say the exact same thing, induced by Kevin's words. I was literally going to go to the exact same story about us being the best 3 to 4 big blind players in the world. So I don't know what that says about you and me, O'Carney.
It's very, very sad, I think. I mean, there's a kind of, I mean, we have basically one brain between us now, and we used to have 2 brains. Come back in a year, it's going to be like half a brain. The trend is very bad here.
It's very bad. It's one brain, and it now has COVID brain fog. I think that's what's happening.
But I, especially on some of these GG tournaments I play on the evening schedule, like when you get after the money, the average stack is sometimes like 22 big blinds. If you get to the final table, there is that big blind rollback. But very often, if the average stack is 22 blinds, you very often have between 4 to 8 a lot of the time. And I feel like I'm not great at that part of the game, and I do want to get better at that part of the game.
Look, Kev, I know we shamelessly plugged Unibet a little more than we usually do in the show, but my God, you've definitely wedged GG in a fair few times as well. I could see it in your background as well.
Of course.
So fair play.
Bro,
3 ambassadors
sponsored.
really swinging for the fences here today.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been great talking to you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Appreciate it, fellas.